Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you so much for joining us for our latest webinar, brought to you today in partnership with our friends at Paystand. I'm your host, Shannon Moffett. I'm the Community Manager for Business Solution Partners. What that means is I work to make sure our NetSuite community is as educated as possible on all things NetSuite. And that includes webinars like these, where we introduce software that complements NetSuite functionality. Let's take a minute to go over today's agenda. We have a great webinar planned for you for the next 45 minutes or so. So let's take a look at what's ahead. First, I'm going to do some introductions and housekeeping. Next, I'm going to introduce Max Robbins to discuss the why, how, and what of Paystand. BSP's own Melody Flynn will add some of her own experience with how her clients have benefited from working with Paystand. And Nick Sheridan will bring us home with a product demo. And of course, we'll end with some Q&A. Speaking of Q&A, if you have any questions about the content presented today at any time during the webinar, please throw it up in the Q&A chat and we will answer as soon as we can. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to introduce our organization and provide you with some resources that will help you on your NetSuite journey. This webinar is brought to you by Business Solution Partners. We have a 35-year history of providing financial consulting and professional services. Through our long tenure as a NetSuite partner, we have empowered companies to achieve more with their NetSuite system. This includes providing custom development, consulting, implementation, training, and dedicated technical support. We would love to extend that expertise to you and your organization if you need help with NetSuite. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Max Robbins, Vice President of Ecosystems for Paystand. Take it away, Max.
All right. Thank you so much, Shannon. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to take a couple steps back and talk about our why in the broader landscape of commercial finance, certainly how that relates to the NetSuite ecosystem at large, because I think it's important. With me today, I have Nick Sheridan. As Shannon mentioned, he'll be running you through a demo in a moment of our solution and how it integrates natively inside of NetSuite. But as I mentioned, before we get to that, I kind of think of that as the how and the what of things. I want to talk about our story and the impact that we're looking to have, our mission and our vision. And that's really this, right? It's, and there's a certain degree I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys have seen this shift from, ERP to HCM to what have you, moving to the cloud. Every business function has done it. But the corporate finance world, the accounting team, they're always left behind in that transition because at the end of the day, they're still shackled to the same technology we've always had access to solve for the problem of payments. We can list them on one hand, right? It's credit card, paper check, and ACH. And aside from being legacy technology, quote, air quotes on technology, if you want to consider paper check technology, it was, literally invented in the 1700s and hasn't changed conceptually since. These payment rails have set this expectation that the more we grow our revenue, the more the cost to receive that revenue will also increase. The usual suspects there being rising credit card processing fees, increasing time to receive my cash, that all important days of sales outstanding metric, increasing manual labor associated with, how do I reconcile all these inbound payments against the outstanding invoices inside of NetSuite, against my bank deposit reconciliation process. I've got a stack of paper checks on my desk. So how do all of those types of pain points stitch together into one cohesive process that's actually communicative to technology and not creating more silos and pain points and broken processes? So we kind of step into that landscape then and say, what would payments look like if you reinvented them from the ground up, right? With access to cloud native ERP technology, obviously such as NetSuite, with this concept of a network that's, so pervasive in every other industry. And it comes down to a few main tenets. One is we would have to do business differently. So really groundbreaking in the sense that we're truly creating a new category around payments as a service, and creating the same type of economies of scale in terms of the cost structure as you make that shift for your finance team. And we'll talk about that in a moment as well. The other piece behind that then is the technology that enables that transition. So, I know I bashed credit card, paper check, and ACH in the beginning. We do handle all of those as sort of a one-stop shop to our customers, more importantly, to create a paradigm shift in payer behavior off of what we, again, view as legacy payment options onto the new, which is something we've built from the ground up. We have a blockchain-powered payment network directly integrated into the financial institutions. Again, you'll see that live in a moment as well. But the net there, guys, is it's faster, it's more secure, and it's free to both the payer and the receiver, which gets back to that main tenet of changing the model, right? Getting away from transaction fees altogether. So when you net that out, and this is what we would love to do with you, with your actual use case, your actual payment mix, your actual pain points, is we have a mix of soft and hard cost savings. And these are real key pain points that we hear a lot about in today's economy, where we're thinking about recession proofing, inflation proofing your business as it grows, profitable growth, margins becoming very important. So, when we talk about levers that impact those types of CFO level conversations, those are very much where we want to figure out how we can move the needle for your business. And again, the usual suspects then are the antithesis to the pain points we heard from credit card, paper check, and ACH. It's we're going to get money in the door faster, typically twice as fast on average. We're going to automate about 85% of the accounting process. And, those obviously being soft costs, when you layer that in with hard cost savings, removing a certainly significant chunk of your payment mix that's, used to having a tax, if you will, off the Visa and MasterCard. There's a lot of very hard cost dollars back in your pocket year one as we start to make that paradigm shift in payment rails. And again, importantly, then, what this does, the paradigm shift this does for you, is as you grow your business, the cost to receive that revenue is not going to grow linearly with that growth. It's actually going to decrease relative to that growth down to, again, that SaaS model, which is, again, a big part of our value proposition to the market, is it should be a flat and fixed model, meaning exactly what your AR cost is going to be when you enter your fiscal year. That's what you pay your accounting team plus the Paystand subscription. And again, taking all of these siloed processes, I've got, something to move funds from point A to point B. I've got credit card processors and payment gateways. I've got, a process to actually run the paper checks to the bank and then reconcile that bank deposit rec against what's showing up inside of NetSuite. More often than not, I've got a full-time staff person sitting in my accounting team, manually keying in paper checks to do those types of matches. So it takes all of that, and the system that you're about to see with Nick's demonstration is taking that entire process, invoice to cash reconciliation and putting automation behind it in a way that removes costs for both you and the payer entirely. And again, this then turns into a value proposition discussion out to the NetSuite ecosystem. So we are by far and away NetSuite's fastest growing and preferred AR vendor today. We've got hundreds of happy customers that we would love to put you in touch with across virtually any industry we can think of. We do hone in on B2B, though that's not to say we can't handle multi-channel direct-to-consumer models as well. And again, it's on the same themes that we've talked about, right? Getting money in the door faster, eliminating credit card fees, eliminating the manual work of the AR team. And you'll see that in a moment when we transition over to Nick. And again, you'll see soup to nuts the entire cash lifecycle. What we want to show you is a native process inside of NetSuite that does nothing but provide automation, best in class UI, best in class payment experience, and receiver experience, and you're going to see that entire flow in a moment. So here, I believe I'll hand it off to Melody for some actual customer testimonial information.
Thank you, Max, and hello, everybody. I am Melody Flynn. I'm an account executive with BSP. Just a little bit of background on me. I used to work directly at NetSuite for 12 years, and I've been with BSP for 2.5 years. So in total, over 14 years working in a sales role with NetSuite. In my role in BSP, I'm focused on the office products, restaurant equipment, and Jan/San industries primarily. I really love working with partners like Paystand because of the value that they add to my prospects and customers. And really one of the things that attracted to me to form a partnership with Paystand is the ROI, kind of what Max was getting into there, um, of the solution for my prospects and customers. So as you can imagine, when companies are switching systems, their ERP systems, and they're looking at NetSuite, cost and ROI is always a concern. And what I found from my experience is that Paystand can actually help prospects pay for a substantial portion of their NetSuite investment because of the ROI with this Paystand solution. So I want to give you an example of that. And whoever's in control of slides, if you don't mind moving the slide forward one, that would be fantastic. Thank you. So this is an example of a company that had approximately kind of averaged out to about $8,500 in credit card fees every month. And again, this is for their on-account customers. And we assumed that a 3% convenience fee would be tacked on to the customer payments if they chose to pay their invoices by credit card. And I'm sure Nick will kind of show you and get into that a little bit more in the demonstration. But that's the assumption here, that the convenience fee would be applied to any customer essentially that was going to pay their invoice and they were going to pay by credit card. A 3% convenience fee would be tacked on. And this also assumed a 10-day decrease in days sales outstanding. And of course, that happens because Paystand really gives customers a very quick and easy way to pay versus snail mailing checks in. So this is what we found in terms of the actual numbers. This prospect was able to see a 5K per month ROI, which is equivalent to 60K per year in credit card expense ROI or reduction. So pretty significant, $60,000 per year just by forming a partnership with Paystand and NetSuite. In terms of the days sales outstanding, $685,000 increase in working capital from that decrease in DSO. And then also just an estimate of, in terms of productivity gains, 2 hours per week in productivity gains for every 100 payments would have been, eliminated or would be eliminated with AR administration tasks. So I hope that gives you kind of just a sense of, if you're in that ballpark of, $8,500 per month in credit card fees, some of the ROI that you can expect to see. And so again, just to kind of reiterate that, in a lot of cases, Paystand can actually help pay for your NetSuite software investment, whether you're looking at NetSuite and evaluating NetSuite, or even as a customer and you want to offset the cost of the annual subscription. So that's everything I had for everyone today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nick.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Melody. So I'll start off with just a brief overview of what we'll cover today. Really, the story we want to tell is just to take you through the full payment cycle with Paystand. So we'll look at receivable creation directly within NetSuite. We'll look at receivable presentment. There are different routes to presentment, primarily emailing from NetSuite, just utilizing NetSuite's email engine. We can present invoices for payment within Suite Commerce as well as My Account. We'll take a quick look at that as well. However, the receivable is presented, core of what we're enabling here is, of course, payments. So we'll look at click to pay. Again, these are emails that are going out with a Paystand button embedded in them. You click to pay within Suite Commerce and My Account as well. But we can also set up auto pay, which is a one-time saving of a fund. That fund can be our bank login option. It can be ACH. It can be a credit card. We'll tokenize that. We'll make that available in NetSuite for the merchant to actually engage that for invoices that are surfaced within NetSuite, right? The different methods we'll look at, I just mentioned most of them here. We'll primarily focus on our digital methods, right, which are the first three here. We can also process paper checks. Important to point that out. We do have a smart lockbox. Probably won't have time for it in this particular demo, but just know that we can support processing paper checks. They're essentially mailed to our lockbox, and we have some automated reconciliation built into that process. We can support ACH push as well. The method that we'll look at in this demo would be ACH pull, where payers actually enter their details. Paystand conducts that pull transaction. But if you have cases where you're For example, uploading invoices to an AP portal. This is mostly for bigger customers like the Home Depots, the Walmarts of the world, and then they are deciding when to push you those funds. We do have a product that can recognize those transactions, recognize those funds in a bank account, and automatically reconcile those. So we'll probably, again, won't look at the ACH push product, but just know that it does exist. And probably take that offline as far as running through that feature. But however the payment is made through Paystand, everything is automated downstream of the payment. We're one of the only processors that actually does payment reconciliation. And to our knowledge, we're the only processor that does deposit reconciliation. So we'll take a close look at these steps. Since we are in the NetSuite environment, as everyone knows, NetSuite is highly customizable ERP, probably the most customizable as far as I know. So we've taken full advantage of that. We've done lots of customizations, especially with respect to autopay. But one I'll highlight here is the idea of automated payment reminders. So these can be the initial request for payment as well as collections notices, something that we set up during implementation. And these workflows and templates are kicked out basically based on the due date of the invoice. But again, we'll take a look at that. We'll finish up the payments process here, looking at credit memos and refunds, just to complete our full story here, okay? So I will leave this demo up here just to sort of keep me and the audience on track. But with that, let me jump into the demo here, right? So I'd like to start off here at suiteapp.com just to, sort of hammer home the idea that we are a partner of NetSuite. We have been for a number of years. They actually advise us on the structure of our integration, and we do utilize the Suite App architecture here. So I think we're all sort of familiar with the idea of a Suite App. It's a near native NetSuite app built on NetSuite's development platform. Gives us access to the ERP, in the sense that we don't need to have a separate dashboard where merchants go to. Everything the merchant would do would be done within the ERP itself. So payment requests are sent directly from invoices or sales orders. They can be sent from the customer record as well, but the merchant is not going beyond NetSuite. So this greatly reduces the number of clicks and just offers a lot of convenience for AR staff. On the back end of payments, any data that we generate will be written back to the merchant NetSuite. So again, no need to go to a separate dashboard to download something like a CSV file and then have a CSV import into NetSuite. That's all part of the integration. That's all automatically done. So again, just offering that added convenience and reducing manual processes along the way. I'll really quickly point out, we'll jump into SuiteCommerce here to look at how we've integrated there. That's one of our newer builds. We're pretty proud of that. So we can enable payments along the SuiteCommerce checkout process, as well as in My Account. If you're not familiar with My Account, it's sort of NetSuite's customer portal where our button can be embedded. Paystand experience can be launched there. So we'll take a close look at that. Lastly, just to mention, we do integrate well with the One World environment. One World is NetSuite's architecture for multiple subsidiaries. So if you do have multiple subsidiaries, or if you're looking to activate them in the future, very easy to activate multiple subs and subsequent subs with Paystand. The payment experience that we'll look at would be branded on a per subsidiary basis, as well as the email templates. Okay. So with that, let me jump into our NetSuite environment here. I'll pick up on the first step here, receivable creation. So I've just created this invoice in NetSuite. And in general, NetSuite, of course, is treated as the source of truth. Invoices and sales orders and even quotes would live within NetSuite. Paystand is piggybacking on these records to enable payment towards them. Okay, so once the invoice is created, requesting payment on this is easy as clicking on the Paystand email button here. Clicking on that grabs certain fields from the record, such as the amount due, the due date. We're looking at the email on the customer record. This is where the email is eventually going to go. And we're just leveraging NetSuite's email engine, as well as native email templates within the NetSuite environment, right? So think about the idea that our button is simply embedded into those. And the button, of course, incorporates the invoice ID. So then after the payment, we know where to come back and write the payment record, for example. If this was a sales order, we have the same buttons embedded, Pay with Paystand, as well as the Paystand email button here. If we're coming back to the sales order to write a payment, this would actually be a customer deposit, whereas an invoice would be a payment record. So we are utilizing native, I would say native NetSuite records that match the record from which the payment request was sent. Okay. But from the merchant perspective, getting the invoice out for payment is as easy as clicking on that button, right? If there's a need to actually make a payment within NetSuite, and this would be the merchant actually doing this, that think about the Paystand user doing this. If they need to submit payment on behalf of the payer, they can click that button that launches a iframe directly within NetSuite. They can add ACH details or card. And the use case here would be something like maybe somebody's calling you up over the phone. The customer wants to submit payment. Merchant is entering those details, making the payment. Not very common, but just to let you know that it does exist. And it's a good point to point out that what the merchant would be exposed to in terms of payment details. And they're only exposed to the last four, and they know that it's a card or they know that it's a bank account. These are essentially the tokens associated with these payment methods. So we're masking any sensitive details. Those sensitive details are always entered in a secure form for Paystand. Paystand handles those in a PCI compliant way. So we are fully PCI compliant. Our merchants do not have to worry about that because they're fully outside of scope for that. So just wanted to mention that really quick. So again, this is the merchant's perspective, just getting that email out for a payment request. So we can switch over to the payer's view here. So payer receives an email, looks something along these lines. This will be branded to match the subsidiary. All of this is fully predefined on the email template within NetSuite. Whatever merge fields have been chosen to injected would be here. Just to point out here, we can support partial payments if desired. We can also turn them off. This PDF is coming directly from NetSuite, so we're not generating anything beyond what NetSuite generates in terms of the PDF. I'll click on our Pay Now button. This is actually coming back in the NetSuite, and we're looking at this particular invoice. We're looking at the amount due. Okay, so this is a real-time call back into NetSuite, essentially treating NetSuite as the database. It's a real-time, call as the payer hits that button. So we're paying exactly what's in NetSuite, no more, no less. Okay. In addition to that invoice amount, we're pulling in any credits. So this is actually a differentiator of Paystand. Very few processors do actually look for credits. So we allow credit application up to the invoice amount. So in this case, I'll choose 2,000. In this case, this would be the payment. And then we'll go back and we'll apply these credits after the payment in a first in, first out basis. So we can apply multiple credits for a single invoice. I won't apply any for this example. Let's go ahead and move forward here. And this comes to our main payment experience. We'll run through our payment options here in a second. Just to point out, if there's a need to present multiple invoices, that would be done through this UI. So just a couple steps added to the user interface here to enable selection of multiple invoices. We can enable partial payments here if desired. I'll go ahead and move forward. And this brings us to our familiar page with credit application and familiar page with the payment options. Just to point out, this would be a single payment on the payer's credit card or bank statement, but we do have visibility of all those individual invoices, so we can do a reconciliation sort of on a per invoice basis. And we'll take a closer look at what that reconciliation actually looks like. Okay, so this is our interface for multiple invoices. A lot of times this circumvents the need for a portal, but if there is a need, for the merchant of a portal, we do integrate, like I said, with SuiteCommerce My Account. So this is the My Account space. This is where invoices would be surfaced. So I'll go to the invoices page here. This brings us to a list of invoices. You'll notice the Pay with Paystand button here. I'll go ahead and click on that. That services an experience really similar to what we just looked at, where there's multiple invoice selection. That would be a branded experience. The same payment methods available would be there. So I can just choose a couple invoices, go ahead and move forward, and we come to our familiar payment options. Okay, just to point out, we can enable all options here. And there's no separate processors required, right? That's a key detail of Paystand, right? Everything is under the Paystand umbrella. So no separate ACH processor, no separate credit card processor, and no separate bank login processor, right? It's all under a single contract with Paystand, sort of a one-stop shop in that case. And we can actually pass fees within the My Account space as well. So this is My Account. If we were to go to the shop of SuiteCommerce, fill up our cart, there would be an option to pay with Paystand in that checkout process as well, right? The details back in NetSuite are slightly different, right? These are all invoices. So after payment, we would be writing a payment record to the invoice. If there's a payment within SuiteCommerce itself, as part of that checkout process, we'd actually be writing a customer deposit to that sales order. We can also enable cash sales if necessary, okay? Okay, so Let me present a third option here, right? As far as payments go, and this is touching upon our auto pay technology. So you'll notice here we're noting that this is actually the experience to save a fund. So we do have all of our options here for tokenizing purposes. So we can choose credit card, we can enter our details, we can submit this. That would create a payment token. It would not create a payment. Same with ACH and bank. So once we create that token, we come back to our customer record here. This is where the token is written, and this can be hidden if necessary. But this token is specifically opted in for what we would call automated payments, right? It's a one-time action of creating that token on the payer's part. But once that's created, the merchant can actually come to an invoice or a sales order, and I'll sort of go into edit mode here to show some fields that would be utilized. So in this case, we can see that the auto pay token has been captured. This is our indicator on the invoice itself. How this token would be used would be this auto pay status field here on the invoice record. So merchant could come here, change this to eligible. If that's changed to eligible on the due date of the invoice, this amount will be automatically paid, right? It's as simple as that. Automated payments are driven by these fields on the invoice. So if these fields change, if the amount due changes, that's what will be paid. If the due date changes, that's when the payment will be made, right? So offering a lot of automation here. I mentioned this status. This can be something that can be automated. So if the desire is to automatically mark these for auto pay, so the merchant does not have to, we can enable that. We've done that just via workflows within NetSuite. Or we can keep it manual if there's an approval process necessary. We can keep this as a manual marking for auto pay. Okay, so we do have different statuses: in progress for payment, success, and failed. So there is an indicator of what happens after the automated payment is made as well, right? So, and we have different workflows to handle those different responses. Okay, but just want to sort of point that out as a little detour. That is how we would handle automated payments, right? So coming back to this invoice, this is our invoice back within NetSuite for 3,000. And this is obviously our payer's perspective clicking through this. So if I choose card, we can see our amount above is updating as I click through these options. So click on card. This is 3% that has been predefined for this particular invoice. It doesn't have to be 3%. This could be actually 2.5%. It could be 3.5%. Typically what we see our merchants pass here is anywhere between 2.9 and 3.5% to cover sort of the worst case scenario, or just the weighted average that our merchants see for the payment mix, right? Cards can be Amex, it can be Visa, Discover. All of those have different processing fees, and the whole idea here is just to enable the merchant the tools, or equip them with the tools to really offset those fees. Okay, so this will be set at whatever amount the merchant would like. On the back end, there will be an actual merchant processing fee. And we will sort out the accounting, and I'll get to that here in a minute. But again, that's our convenience fees, fully customizable. We can actually go in the other direction, right? I'm adding a fee in this case. If I wanted to add a discount for ACH, if the merchant is, for example, dealing with a lot of paper checks and they want to offer, let's say, a 1% discount for digital ACH or our bank login, we can definitely enable that as well. So again, we can go in both directions. We can add a fee, or we can present a discount for payment options. Okay. Other than that, the details here, pretty straightforward. What we're asking for a credit card. ACH, this is an ACH pull transaction where payers enter their routing and account number, and Paystand conducts that pull, right? Nothing very new there. This ACH network actually dates back in the US to late 60s, early 70s. I think we're all fairly familiar. The newer option here, bank login, this is something that Paystand built from the ground up. It's based on the login between the payer and their bank. So quite different from ACH. And there are some different features that really differentiate it further from the ACH process for submitting a payment. And I'll actually jump to that for demo purposes here. You'll notice first off, we have our list of banks. These are just the major banks here in the US. There is a search bar here to find whatever is not listed here. In terms of coverage, this is upwards of 98% of commercial accounts in the States are covered for this option. So very rare to come across a bank that's not supported. So I'll use Bank of America moving forward. Let me go and log in. And again, I'm in the payer shoes here. I'm logging into my bank to submit payment. I come to my two-factor authentication. This is tomato for demo purposes only. This would not be the case in production. This would probably be a text message or an email, some sort of security code entered here via phone call or whatever that may be, right? Whatever 2FA is set up between the payer and their bank will be surfaced here. I will go and enter the name on my account. We do support individual commercial accounts for this option. After submitting this, we come to a page where we are actually instantly verifying the funds in the accounts under this login, right? So something that really just doesn't exist for ACH transfers in general, right? And the whole idea is to not allow selection of insufficient funds, really mitigating any risk of an NSF type scenario. So this is analogous to a credit card transaction where actually you cannot move forward with an account that does not have sufficient funds for that particular invoice. I'll go and enter my address details here, and we'll go in and submit payment. Now, after this is submit, what you would expect typically happens, right? So the emails are sent out to both payer and merchant. This functions as a sort of receipt of payment for the payer and an initial notification to the merchant of the payment. After that, we'll jump into these two steps of reconciliation here. So here's our confirmation page just to let you know what that looks like. So let's jump into step 4 here. Let's go back to our invoice here. And I mentioned before the idea of actually requesting payment on a sales order. This is typically the case. We work with a lot of like solar installers, for example, or manufacturers who need some sort of deposit to the sales order before they actually start the process of fulfillment and shipment and the rest of it. So you could definitely request a payment to a sales order, and then after payment, we are coming back and writing a customer deposit to that sales order. Okay, there's a need to write a partial deposit to the sales order, something short of this $3,000. We can definitely enable that with this custom amount due field. This is where you would enter whatever amount you want to essentially override that. So we can enable partial deposits as well as partial payments. Coming back to our invoice here, I'll go ahead and refresh. And just as a heads up, NetSuite has been running a little bit slow this morning, and this was actually lightning fast compared to what I saw just 30 minutes ago. But in real time, we are coming back and we are actually writing a payment record to this invoice. Again, this happens within seconds of payment. Coming to history here, this is our payment record that we've written. And again, I mentioned before, when we sent out that payment request, one of the fields that we injected was the internal ID of that invoice. So we know exactly where we're coming back. This is a deterministic writing of this payment record. There's no, we're not guessing. There's no AI involved here. It's actually hard coded in to that payment request that was sent out. You'll notice this is marked as not deposited because those funds are, of course, still in transit. Once they do settle, we'll come back to this payment record and we'll mark it as deposited. So if I jump to an invoice here that's been paid some time ago, come to history, this is what that status change looks like. So this being marked as deposited is actually a real-time reflection of those funds that have landed in the merchant's account, right? So on the payment record itself, this is, of course, is also shown as deposited. And really quickly, I want to show what this would look like for a credit card payment. So if we had made a credit card payment, important to note, the invoice amount is not affected whatsoever, right? That would cause all kinds of accounting issues, crossing periods, and the rest of it. So we do not do that. What we do is actually just write a separate journal entry for the fee revenue and treat it as a separate amount, right? Because this is obviously conditional on actually choosing that credit card as the payment option. Okay, so again, not affecting the invoice at all here. To give you an idea of what drives this status change from not deposited to deposited, I'll come to my deposits page here. This is a list of all deposits that have taken place in this sandbox environment. And these amounts and dates are sort of inconsistent, but typically there would be a deposit on a daily basis into the merchant's account. This usually happens at around 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it'll be a lump sum, and it will comprise multiple payments for typically multiple invoices here. So looking at one of these deposits just as an example, this is indicating that this amount of $15,000 and change has hit the merchant's account on this date. This consists of all these payments as well as all these invoices. We're showing our payment method, of course, we're showing our customers, and we're showing our amounts. Okay, so again, everything that went into deposit is fully listed here. No need for the merchant to go and download something, like a bank file or a CSV file, and then upload that or do any sort of manual matching. The matching is actually built in to this process, right? If the merchant uses match bank data, they would have one amount essentially per day that they would match. They would not have to match the individual invoices. Okay, important to point that out. In addition to invoice amounts, we are reconciling convenience fees. So the fees will be listed here. This would be for a credit card transaction. This would probably be for ACH. But these are the back-end processing fees, sort of the cost of the transaction. These are the fees that would be offset by using convenience fees, right? Max touched upon the idea that Paystand enables our merchants to realize that constant, that flat AR cost of just our subscription fee and actually offloading these convenience fees. This is how we're doing it with the built-in convenience fees technology. Okay. Take a step back, a broader view. Just want to run through this really quick, and I'll just flash this up here. This is recorded. I'm sure some of the audience members want to go through this, especially any accountants in the room. But really quick, invoice creation, we're hitting AR as you would normally expect. As of the payment, these two entries, the first one is relieving AR, basically crediting AR of a full amount. We're balancing that out with an entry, basically a debit to what we call paid fees journal entry, right? So debiting AR and then crediting what we call convenience fees. These account namings are totally up to the merchant, right? But the full amount will go to undeposited funds, and those funds will sit there until full settlement, right? Upon full settlement in the bank account, these are the next fee. And by the way, these are all automated journal entries, just showing this for clarity here. We'll relieve that undeposited funds as of the deposit that hits the merchant's bank account. That will be debited to the bank account, and then the actual processing fee will be credited off, so that the net that hits the merchant's bank account will be $15.15 in this case, right? And just to point out, there's typically a difference between the convenience fees collected and the actual merchant processing fee. And the differential will just be rolled into the deposit, okay? If there's a negative differential, that would, of course, be deducted. And then we have a merchant processing fee account where we're debiting this just to sort of offset what we're crediting off from the bank account, okay? So in general, this is what accounting looks like in the case where convenience fees are turned on. If convenience fees are turned off, it's slightly different. There will be an absorption of fees. Obviously, a lot of our merchants don't do that. They do incorporate convenience fees, so they can offset, again, those back-end processing fees. Okay. That in a nutshell is what our automated reconciliation looks like. Again, some processors do this payment rec, but as far as we know, none of our competitors actually do the deposit end, where really that's where the tedious, time-consuming and manual work actually lives. Okay. I mentioned really quick, I'll jump into the automated reminders here. And this is just something that I'll talk through, sort of difficult, or not difficult, but sort of tricky to demo something that is automated, right? But in general, for our automated reminders, we implement a series of workflows that read the due date. And at a certain point relative to that due date on the invoice, we'll kick out emails. The emails are based on templates that we implement within NetSuite. Each template would have unique verbiage. The payment reminders can have sort of nice verbiage. And then if it's, if the invoice is 15 or 30 days past due, we can have Dunning type language where the language gets sort of more stern as time goes on, right? But again, we're just reading the due date, kicking out emails at a predefined cadence. And of course, on each of those emails, as I showed before, there would be a pay now button for a single invoice, or we could actually send a link to where multiple invoices would be surfaced. And this would basically bring up everything under that customer record that's open to enable, with a few clicks, the payment of everything and really clearing out aging receivables. So that would be the idea, right? So to summarize, again, just something that we set up during implementation to read the due date, send out emails on a predefined cadence. At a certain point, we can send a reminder to internal staff. So maybe at the 120-day mark or 90-day mark, we can notify internally just via a NetSuite task or just CCing on our emails. But that is typically what it looks like. Okay. All right, to sort of wrap up here, we'll finish off talking about credit memos and refunds. I mentioned before, when a credit memo is issued, that can be left as a credit memo, and we can bring in any credit memos into this experience to allow sort of self-service application, right? So that is, I would say that's option number one. It's a very easy option. A lot of our merchants actually do incorporate that because it's sort of hands-off from their perspective. They don't need to be sending emails back and forth with their pairs or phone calls. The self-service does add some efficiency there. But the other option is from a credit memo, if there's a need to issue a refund, very straightforward from the merchant's perspective. They would click on refund. That would essentially generate a refund record. As long as this was paid with Paystand, there would be an option. The payment method would be automatically selected, whether that's credit card, bank login, or ACH. So I can come down here, just view this really quick. I think this one was actually paid with a credit card. So we would just leave that and we would hit save. That would create the refund record. Paystand would read that transaction. We would process the refund back to the payer. That refund will actually appear on the next deposit that hits the merchant's bank account, and it would just appear under cashback. This is one of those NetSuite terms that's a little bit deceptive, but cashback is basically what's netted out from the amount that hits the merchant's bank account. Okay, so again, merchant initiates refund, Paystand reads that, issues a refund on the back end, and we account for that in the next deposit that hits the merchant's bank account. Okay. Okay, so with that step 6, that's really all that I wanted to cover. Really quick to talk through how we handle checks. We do have a physical lockbox, sort of as part of that lockbox product. We are recognizing invoice numbers on checks just via OCR technology. We will match that with what's in NetSuite, and if we can perform that match, the merchant has no intervention in that process. We can perform that match, create our payment record, and then that check would appear on the next deposit report. Okay, when those funds settle. Okay, ACH push is fairly similar to where if merchants are uploading invoices to an AP portal, those funds are sent. We provide visibility of those funds landing in the merchant's bank account, and then we provide matching tools where that amount, whatever that ACH push transaction amount is, can be matched to one or more invoices in the ERP, in this case, NetSuite. Once that match is done, we're creating our payment records, and then we're automating the deposit reconciliation. So those are something that we'd love to dive into further if needed, right? But I'll go and stop there, and I will pass it back. I appreciate everyone's time, and yeah, I think we're probably going to open up for questions here in a second.
Does anyone have any questions for us? I know I do have some questions.
I have one too, actually, Shannon. There's something I wanted to comment on. So
Okay, go ahead, Melody.
okay, I'll kick it off here. So a lot of my prospects and customers really love the idea of the convenience fee, but they want to exclude, specific customers because they're, high value customers, or, maybe they only want to apply the convenience fee if an invoice is greater than $2,500 or something like that. So
Yep.
I know there's flexibility. Nick, do you mind just addressing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mel, that's a great question. And actually, we built that exact feature to enable that based on customer feedback, right? And actually, a lot of our features have been developed based on that sort of feedback, that sort of dynamic. But to answer your question, definitely we can enable convenience fees to be set on a customer level. If you think about at the customer level, you have a customer record in NetSuite. We could have a drop down, which basically defines the actual convenience fees for that customer, so that when the payment request is sent, we have a specific link that services an exact convenience fees configuration that was set on the customer record, right? So that's how we can enable that by customer. You mentioned the idea of threshold. So if the invoice is 5,000 or more, turn on convenience fees, otherwise leave them off. We definitely enabled that. That logic is actually built into the email template. So again, that threshold can be assigned on a customer level, or it can be a global setting. So we have a lot of flexibility, and actually we leverage a lot of native NetSuite features to enable that. So definitely we've had cases where convenience fees are turned off totally, or they're turned on, 2.5% or 3.5%, and this can be delineated by customer. We've had the threshold case that you mentioned. So we do have a lot of flexibility in how we present fees, how we turn them on. And I mentioned the idea of going the opposite direction, right? We can provide a certain number of discounts, right? The accounting is slightly different for discounts, but we do still handle that in an automated way. But hopefully that answers the question. It's a really good question, really common question that we get from our merchants.
Thanks, Nick. Greatly appreciate it.
Sure.
Looks like that's the end of the questions, and that's the end of our time with you today. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.